I'm Carla Mayer from Family Memories Matter. I had something happen this week that I wanted to tell you about because I think it's something that happens to a lot of us when we're people that are interested in family history but also can get overwhelmed by family history. There was a box that my sister had saved after my father died that certainly looked historical. I brought it home, I stuck it under a desk for a while, and finally this week I realized I probably need to figure out what's in this box and decide what to do with it. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I did, share some of my ideas, and you may have ideas too that you want to share with us in the comment section. But I opened the box and the lid, and the first thing that I found was this. Look at that. Truman announces the war is over, from 1945. It doesn't get much cooler than that. Another one from 1945. The nation mourns Roosevelt. How cool is that? So there were these great bits of history. Now I'm a history buff, so my first thought was I want to post those and put them up on the wall and frame them. I did a little research and found out that that's generally not a good idea if you really want the newspapers to last. Newspaper, the actual material that it's printed on, is really not intended to be archival. And so if it's exposed to light, it will fade and you will lose the newspapers. So in general, you'd want to make a copy if you wanted to frame it. Otherwise, you want to put it in an acid-free box and store it in the shelf where it's dark but dry, very dry. The next thing I did was I pulled off the papers and found piles of letters, miscellaneous papers, cards, report cards, a lot of things. So, you know, I had that feeling, and I'm sure a lot of you have, where you think, oh, yay, this is so cool, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I did. I'm hoping it'll help because these kind of things can be exciting and overwhelming all at the same time. So what I did was I made one pile that was everything that had to do with my dad. So letters that my dad wrote were in there. Sometimes he would write a letter out and then copy it before he sent it to somebody. So I kept those letters because I figured they may tell me interesting things about my dad. He kept things like his college report cards in there, some high school report cards. Any of those things I kept. I put that in a keep pile over here. The next thing I did was I took out things that I thought were interesting or perhaps historical in some way, but weren't necessarily containing any interesting family history. So things like postcards or greeting cards that people sent that might have just had somebody's name signed on them. So they don't really have any family history value. However, some people, if you're industrious, will like to buy these things on eBay as vintage cards and postcards. So that's another option. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. But what I know is that this pile is things that I think may be historically interesting. My dad was really into radios. There's a lot of ads for radios. Might be interesting to some people, but not necessarily for my family history. So that was pile number 2. Pile number 3 was letters that people wrote to my dad. So it was pretty obvious when I went through that he had really like 4 or 5 main people that he wrote to. Now, one of them I knew he loved very much. He had a friend in college who was from Puerto Rico. He loved him dearly. He learned Spanish from him. Anytime his friend was back in Puerto Rico, they would write each other. So there are these letters between my father and his friend Appy. So I kept those and put them aside because I know on Ancestry I have found Appy's family tree. And if I can, I'm going to actually send these letters to Appy's family so that they have some of their own ancestors, relatives, letters, which I think will be really cool. And then I took all the other letters that he got, and again, most of them were from about 3 or 4 different correspondents, and grouped them together. Now, what I'm going to do with those is the same thing. If I happen to know where that family lives, I'm going to jot on a card and say, oh, I have some letters that might be, you know, interesting to you from your grandmother, great-grandmother. And it's interesting reading through them because some things never change. You know how you have people on social media who like to show you what they had for lunch and tell you that they're bored or, you know, whatever the little pieces of information. Things haven't changed that much. There are some letters that just say nothing. They say nothing really about the person themselves or the person they're sending it to other than, I was thinking of you. So those letters don't have a lot of historical value, and those letters generally I will throw out. Some of the letters, though, had things in them that may have given me a clue about the area they lived in, or my father somehow. And those letters I'm going to scan and back up on my computer, and then I'm going to throw them out. Or if I think I know the family, I can check and see if somebody from that family wants to use them. So that's how I solved my problem this week. I did find an interesting fact that I didn't know before I went through this box, so it's always worth taking the time to do it. My sister and I had questioned whether my dad had taken off time between high school and college during the war, during World War II. My sister didn't think he had. I thought I'd heard he had. Well, I found his report card from his senior year in high school, and in it his teacher said, "Glenn, these are your grades for this quarter, and these grades are too good for you not to come back to school. You need to come back to school." And then I found a letter from a classmate of his, Mary Catherine White. She writes my dad and she says, "Look, I've talked to the teacher. If you come back before the end of the year, you can make up the work and still graduate. Thank you, Mary Catherine White." My father going back and finishing high school changed the trajectory of his life, because then he went on to go to college. He went on to work in civil service for the government. So that was a really pivotal time in my dad's life, and to find those little details in the box. And again, I just want to say, I know sometimes when we find boxes like this, you just want to sort of put them down and walk away. In fact, that is what I did when I first got this box. I'm not going to lie. But when you feel ready to do it, take the time. Go through it, see what you can save, see what you think you want to keep copies of, but you don't necessarily need to keep. A lot of these papers are kind of moldy. I don't necessarily want to keep ones that don't have any real value to my family history. And then see what kind of new secrets you find out about your family. It could be the coolest experience. So you may have some other ideas for things that you've done when you've found boxes like this, so please feel free to share that in the comments below.